I use Krylon spray paint to match my mismatched flower pots.
To revamp my vintage vanity.
To liven up my light fixtures.
I use it on everything.
Krylon Fusion all-in-one spray paint with 5 times stronger adhesion works on almost any surface. And with built-in primer, rust protection, and a no-peel guarantee, this is one can that can do it all. Visit Krylon.com for more and to find your local retailers. Krylon Fusion all-in-one spray paint has 5 times stronger adhesion as compared to other Krylon general-purpose paints.
Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice. I'm your host, Bethany Moore. I'm the Deputy Director of Communications at the National Cannabis Industry Association. Today on the show is one of our board members, Khurshid Khoja. He's the founder of Greenbridge Corporate Counsel, PC, a California business law firm he founded in 2012, which represents clientele from across numerous sectors in the legal cannabinoid industries on regulatory, startup, corporate, intellectual property, finance, and other commercial and transactional matters. Khurshid currently serves as Chair Emeritus of the Board of Directors at NCIA and serves as co-chair of NCIA's Policy Council. He's also outside General Counsel to Students for Sensible Drug Policy. He's previously served on the board and policy committee of the Minority Cannabis Business Association, California State Treasurer's Cannabis Banking Working Group as a founding board member and general counsel of the California Cannabis Industry Association, also a mentor and member of the selection committee for the Arcview Investor Network. Among other honors, Khurshid was profiled in the National Law Journal's first ever Cannabis Law Trailblazers list. He's been named to the annual Northern California Super Lawyers Rising Stars list multiple times and has received SSDP's Unsung Hero Award multiple times and Arcview Investor Network's Outstanding Member Award. You're a very busy man, Khurshid. Welcome to the show.
I try to stay out of trouble, Bethany. Yeah.
Great. So that was a lot to cover, but, I always love to hear more about the background and experience of people in our cannabis community,
Sure.
Sort of the things they did before getting involved in cannabis. Like maybe you wanted to be an astronaut when you grew up. How about you? What's your story?
Well, certainly if anyone had told me on my way into law school that I would be a cannabis industry attorney when I grew up, I probably would have laughed at them. I went into law school after spending time at an arms control think tank in DC. And so I went into law school thinking that I would be doing international law. It turned out that I had an aptitude for business and regulatory law. And so, that's what I ended up doing out of law school before I got into the cannabis industry. So I was at a big multinational law firm working on securities deals, working on a lot of renewable energy transactions, and general corporate and regulatory work as well. So some of the same things that I do, but outside the cannabis industry.
Gotcha. Great. Yeah. Great skill sets to bring over into cannabis, which is incredibly highly regulated and complicated as well. So with all that, what attracted you to moving into solely the cannabis space from a legal perspective? How did that happen?
So it was, I was building my dream practice. I guess how it happened over time was, I was a consumer of cannabis for many years before I actually started working in the industry and had a love for the plant. And then in law school, also had the benefit of going through a seminar on the drug war and all the civil rights atrocities that were happening in the name of the war on drugs, and how cannabis prohibition was front and center of all that. And so for me, I was an activist, social justice activist, fairly early on in life. My first protest was sophomore year of high school. I was in front of the South African consulate protesting apartheid, for me, there was, my cannabis activism and all my previous activism, it all kind of looped together for me, right? Especially when I started to read folks like Michelle Alexander, right? Who, there was a point, there was a fact that she cited in her book, The New Jim Crow, basically saying, hey, we lock up more Black men in America for cannabis than the number of Black men that were locked up in South Africa during an insurgency against apartheid. So that to me spoke volumes, right? And helped me see the continuity of kind of what I'd been doing along, during my life and what I wanted to do.
Wow, that's a great story. And yeah, being at protests early on in our careers certainly gives us a certain taste for wanting to continue to be a part of these issues as we develop into our careers. I can personally relate to that as well. So these days you've been running the Greenbridge Corporate Counsel law firm since 2012. So you got your 10-year anniversary here. Tell me more about what's going on with the firm. How are you celebrating your tenure?
We're celebrating it with more work.
Good problem to have.
Yes, absolutely a good problem to have. My day to day, I both practice as an attorney and I have to run the law firm as well. And then I've also got all of my pro bono commitments, including the NCIA board, which I love dearly. And so my role at the firm, though, is to guide our practice, to grow our practice. And so, we've gone from being a, quote unquote, marijuana firm to being a firm that represents clients, throughout what I like to call the cannabinoid industries, right? So it's not just psychoactive cannabis and marijuana, but also hemp and also, pharmaceutical and biosynthetic cannabinoids as well. And so, we're expanding our services to be able to serve all of the cannabinoid industries competently. And we have been doing that now for some time. We are also branching out more and more into psychedelics work, specifically, helping nonprofits and other enterprises that are trying to help folks through psychedelic treatment and therapy to get past injuries such as PTSD. For example, we help a group called VETS, which helps veterans, former Navy SEALs that have had severe PTSD. They are able to get their lives back on track through psychedelic therapies that are administered overseas. And so, the psychedelics practice is something that is growing and that we also take to be part and parcel of our mission, right? As a law firm, our mission as a law firm is to fight the drug war. It's not just to make money, setting up cannabis businesses, but to continue fighting the drug war until it's over, until we roll it back completely. And so the psychedelics work is part and parcel of that. The other thing that I'm really excited about at our practice, that we're starting to grow is our digital assets practice. And so, I think blockchain, cryptocurrency technology have an incredible amount of promise, not only for private industry, but for being able to accomplish public goods, common goods, right? And so I have a vision for using these technologies to advance the cannabis industry. For example, if we're not able to get safe banking in a reasonable amount of time, we need to have some solutions, right? And so that's the kind of work that is occupying my time these days.
Yeah, there's, never a dull moment these days in the cannabis industry. And, the phrase Moore's Law, right? The idea that every year more and more science builds on top of itself is true in the cannabis industry as well, with the science of our cannabinoids and all the different components of our industry, not to mention all the technology that's being developed in our industry. It really is becoming a very, very high tech and high science industry as well. And I'm just loving to see all the cannabinoid science coming out. So it's really what we have been working toward all this time. And now the science is backing us up. So yeah, you definitely have your work cut out for you. Okay, let's take our first commercial break and then we'll come back and chat more with Khurshid. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio, and we're chatting with Khurshid Khoja from Greenbridge Corporate Counsel, and he is also one of our Evergreen members, which is our top tier of membership for companies and organizations that really want to be policy leaders in the cannabis industry. So let's chat a bit more about NCIA's advocacy efforts, which you have been a part of since basically day one of NCIA. Do you remember your first NCIA lobby days experience in Washington, D.C. many, many years ago? I know it was a much smaller group the first couple of years. Do you have any memories?
I do. I wish that I had been at the very first lobby days, but I can't say that I was at the very first one. But certainly, I believe I was at the third one that we had. So I was a full-fledged NCIA member at that point, and I remember going to DC with a lot of other folks from California that were very engaged with NCIA. And I remember how empowering that was. Certainly, that feeling has grown over time because, as cannabis legalization has advanced, we are able to, we're taken much more seriously in the halls of Congress than we were during those first lobby days, right? I remember meetings where, we had certain staffers who would look at us incredulously, as to why we were there and, didn't, had some inkling that there was a state legal cannabis industry, but still, we were still the butt of jokes, right? We were still hearing stupid stoner jokes from staffers and, really annoying stuff. We were having staffers meet with us, in the hallways rather than, allow us to be in the offices, and we certainly were not getting, meetings with congressional leadership, right, at the time early on. There were certainly champions that we had, that were in their party's leadership, but it was very, the high level meetings were few and far between early on. That being said, it was still an incredibly empowering experience and one which, got me to come back over and over and over again, year after year. It is one of the things that I miss the most since the COVID pandemic is that we haven't been able to have an in-person lobby days for 2 years now, I believe. And so I'm looking forward to resuming that because that there is nothing like that experience for our members.
I couldn't agree more. It was 2019, May, I believe, when we had our last lobby days, and it was pre the COVID pandemic and pre political unrest. DC right now is, Congress has changed their security protocols, to say the least. So, I'm not sure what it's going to look like in the future. But, in 2019, our last in-person lobby days, we had over 300 cannabis industry professionals.
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create new possibilities, from intelligent automation to cloud management that requires less management. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM, let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
And I always love that moment where we all get together on the Capitol steps and, wrangle everyone together for the class photo.
Yeah.
Oh God, what a great year. And that year I got to say hello to Senator Bernie Sanders myself. He passed me in the hallway and I said, "Hello, Mr. Sanders." And he said, "Hello."
Wow.
Highlight of my trip. What about you from that last one?
From that last one, I would say, I guess the highlight was that I was privileged enough to meet with Congresswoman Pelosi's office. Actually, then I think she was, I believe she was minority leader at that time, or she could have actually been speaker at that point. In fact, I think she was speaker, but we actually got to meet with her staff in her office, and we got to take pictures, the whole 9 yards. As well. And I remember sitting in that office and again, sort of just being, overwhelmed with kind of where we were, like I'd never been in that office before. And I think probably very few cannabis advocates had been in that office at that point. And so I remember that feeling like a moment where, hey, we've arrived. We are taken very seriously. We're doing it. We are transforming federal law. We are hastening the demise of cannabis prohibition at a federal level. This is happening, right? And I remember being there with Chris Crane, who's now chair of the board and a close, longtime friend of mine. I think Michael Correa was there from NCIA's GR staff. And I just remember feeling like we had made so much progress since the time that we had begun that exercise, and that we really were coming into our own.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking of the evolution over the years, we maybe had one piece of legislation, or cannabis legalization was just a concept, and over the years we now have like a handful of pieces of legislation that have been introduced in either house at this stage, right? So the House of Representatives at this stage had passed the Safe Banking Act through several times. It just keeps kind of sitting in the Senate. So, and then we're seeing more comprehensive legislation being introduced as well, like the MORE Act. So we had a lot more to talk about too. Yeah. Absolutely.
There was a lot more, and there was the level of engagement from staffers, was also markedly different than what we had before, just for the simple reason that there were more legal states. There were more staffers who were from states that now had legal cannabis. It was a real thing for them, and they had to learn very quickly.
Right. Yes. It went from a haha, this is funny. The stoners the stoners came to DC to, we are real business people. We're a real industry. We're creating real jobs. We're generating a lot of tax revenues.
That's right.
Yeah. So I want to get to our most recent lobby days. But first, I actually want to talk about a little bit more about the role of Evergreen members of NCIA. We retooled our membership packages a year ago and developed this new membership tier called Evergreen. So these are really companies that are super stepping up to really, really be involved and get some white glove service from our government relations team. And higher level access to these members of Congress and regulators. So just for a minute or two, what does this Evergreen membership represent for you and your company and for NCIA's advocacy efforts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for us as a company, it's a commitment that we have to drug policy reform. It's a commitment we have to NCIA. It's a commitment that we have to not only the cannabis industry, but a vibrant and diverse cannabis industry, one that's not just a few players dominating the industry, but something that represents the breadth and diversity of all cannabis entrepreneurs across the country, right? So to me, NCIA is that's what sets us apart, is that we are a big tent, and so we certainly do represent a number of publicly traded MSOs as members of ours, but we also represent plenty of mom and pop businesses too, right? And so a lot of those mom and pop businesses, are not able to get government relations services to advocate, on their behalf, right? They're not big companies that can go and spend $50,000 a month on a lobbying firm to help them do that, or even spend, the cost to play with some of the big boys, the bigger companies that have organized themselves into smaller trade associations, more exclusive trade associations. They don't have those resources, right? We make these resources available to them, through the Evergreen membership. But it's also important to say that we make these resources available to our entire membership. The Evergreen members are great because they help us keep the lights on at a time when, we have not been able to do conferences. We've not been able to do a lot of the revenue generating activity that we used to do pre-pandemic. And so having these Evergreen members step up and help keep the lights on and help move things forward is really critical. And I think we deliver a lot of value for the support that we get in exchange.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, let's take our last commercial break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about our most recent lobbying event, which happened all virtually, of course, over Zoom with our Evergreen members. So stay tuned. We'll be right back to wrap up our chat with Khurshid Khoja of Greenbridge Corporate Counsel. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice will return once we give a voice to our sponsors.
All right, we're back on NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice on Cannabis Radio. I'm your host, Bethany Moore, with the National Cannabis Industry Association. And we've been talking with Khurshid Khoja from Greenbridge Corporate Counsel, who has been very involved in the cannabis industry for over a decade and is one of our Evergreen members. So just a few weeks ago, NCIA conducted a virtual mini Lobby Days event with our Evergreen Roundtable members, which Greenbridge Corporate Counsel is a member of. So, of course, these meetings were a little bit different from the meetings you were describing earlier before the break, where, we went to DC and walked the halls of Congress and sat in congressional offices. A little bit different because it happened over Zoom, but this was basically the same concept of having conversations with members of Congress, educating them, things like that, right? Can you tell me more about how that went down?
Yeah, I did not know what to expect. Certainly we have had Zoom meetings with congressional staffers independently of Lobby Days. Myself, Michael Cooper, our GR staff, Aaron. Over time during the pandemic, we've had those meetings, and they've all, been useful and productive meetings. But I didn't know how kind of the Lobby Days exercise would go because it's quite different from just one-off meetings, right? We've got to coordinate everybody. You've got to present to these congressional staffers in a way that is professional, represents our members well, represents the diversity of our members as well. And so, I did not know exactly what to expect, other than to know that our GR staff had done their damnedest to put something together that was, frankly, really, really well executed. And I think very, very empowering, right? I was worried that not being in person might detract from that sort of esprit de corps that you have in in-person lobby days exercises. But I think that every meeting that I was in, we had representatives from the Evergreen members from various parts of the industry, representing different communities, people of color, and I thought that it was more inclusive, I think, than an in-person lobby days could be, just, given the fact that not everyone can travel, can give up a week and go travel to DC for lobby days. People have, jobs, people have children, families, and so it can be difficult to get out for that. And so the thing that I, really loved about virtual lobby days is that we didn't have that barrier to entry. We didn't have that obstacle, right? So you could get more folks out in front of staffers that maybe would not be able to make it to an in-person lobby days. And so I thought that was an aspect that I had thought about before, but I thought was a huge positive, right? And so I think the staffers also came away with a very holistic picture of our membership and their concerns as well. And I think, we had a lot of conversations where we didn't necessarily see eye to eye with staffers. And we even got to talk to, we even were able to meet with Senator Booker, Cory Booker. We were able to meet with other members of Congress as well, and had some very, frank discussions with them. Polite, of course, as always. But I don't know that again that we would have access to Senator Booker for that many folks, at once to meet with him if we were doing it in-person lobby days, right? I think it'd be a lot harder to coordinate. And so, I think we, were able to be much more representative, and I think we were able to have opportunities for advocacy that maybe wouldn't present themselves if we had to coordinate this in person. So
great point. Yeah,
fantastic exercise. I do still want to see us go back to in-person lobby days as well, but I think this is also a fantastic addition, and we ought to be doing this more often too for those who can't necessarily make it out to DC.
Yeah, what a great point, Khurshid. Yeah, and I also can't wait to get back to DC as well, as it used to be my stomping grounds as a young activist. So it's such a great experience. And as we're wrapping up here, another thing I'm looking forward to, we are hosting our in-person conference and trade shows. We were at the Moscone Center in San Francisco in December of 2021. It was a little different. They required vaccination proof to get in. Masks were required, the whole 9 yards, but we made it happen. So we'll be back again in July 20th, 21st, and 22nd, 2022, the Cannabis Business Summit and Expo. More information, tickets will be available in April. Head to cannabisbusinesssummit.com for more information, and the show is coming together as we head toward July as well. Looking forward to seeing you there, Khurshid, and thank you for spending a few minutes with me today on the show to talk about how we're conducting our lobbying efforts in strange times.
Thank you for having me, Bethany. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the show, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NCIA's Cannabis Industry Voice. Until next time.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.